Like 11 o'clock, that's
Okay.
fine, no problem. In fact, I was just looking over, is this your topic here? How are things going? Do you have anything you want to talk about first, or?
No, well, I think I'm confident like with the topic because I changed it,
Uh-huh.
so I don't have my lit review yet because a lot of them are going to use what they did on academic writing, but
Okay.
I'm not.
You're
gonna
not
do
using your literature review from academic writing?
No,
So you'll
because
be
it's
different.
yeah.
Okay. That's fine. I was looking over here your handout, and I'll give this back to you. In fact, I'm creating a video here. I think it would be helpful if we could add this information. I'm going to give this back to you here, but if you could add this information to the student thesis list where you have included the link to the Google Drive document, and basically just moving this information, copying and pasting it over to Canvas, because in some of your cases, and I'm not sure if this will be your case, but we may be kind of tweaking it, changing it a little bit as we go through. So this kind of helps me, and I think helps you kind of stay focused about what it is you're actually what you're doing. So let me just review this very briefly to see if we're on the same page and to clarify anything that you might have. Looking first, it looks like you want to focus on a pure basic research problem, correct? So you wish to learn more about lesson planning because you want to find out about how strictly teachers are following their lesson plan and what teachers think about let's see, what teachers think about what they think about lesson planning. So what they think about lesson planning in order to understand how useful lesson planning is, so that maybe teachers might be informed of the relevance of planning. Okay. Now, if we go to step 2, we have a prompt here. I wish to examine. Can you tell me maybe a little bit more in detail what you plan to examine in your research as it relates to your problem research?
Remember I had like 2 options. One was observing like one teacher and like the lesson plan.
Right.
Well, having the teacher give me the lesson plan, and then I think I'm gonna grab someone from one of my classmates because they're doing reflections as well, and I can also use the reflections. And they have to send everything. They have to send the lesson plan, reflection, material, and everything. So that was one option, and the other option was doing a quantitative study, but I have to find like a study that has already been done. So
let's think maybe in terms of a qualitative, just as an example, a qualitative research study. And you mentioned reflections, and so that is one thing that you can examine. Reflections, I guess these would be reflections after the class, or would this be before?
After the class.
Okay, so this would be like post class reflections. What else might you observe if you were looking at a qualitative research study? Let's say that you observe the class. Is there anything in particular within the class that you would observe?
Like the activities or the material used.
All right. So these are things you need to probably decide on. These are all possibilities: activities, or maybe it's materials.
I have to decide one, or.
Well, you need to decide on a few. Like it has to be what we want to try to do is pinpoint exactly what we want to examine to see that it's doable, that you can do it. So we don't want too many, but we also want enough that makes it worth investigating. So, certainly I think reflections are one option. That's one thing. And all of these things that you're examining, these will then lead into the types of instruments that you need to apply. So you'll have, when you make your decisions on whether you're going to do interviews or surveys or whatever, will depend on what you plan to examine. So one is reflections. Now I'm assuming do they write out their reflections, or are you going to record? Are you going to record like their conversation, their reflecting, speaking with someone else?
They write them.
Okay, they write it out. Okay. Is there any type of verbal, like do they speak? Do they reflect like with their tutors or within amongst themselves?
I think they have a feedback session with their tutors. So maybe I can ask if I could like record that.
All right. So you need to decide. Okay. So written, right? That would be one. Reflections. Do you want to also record their conversations with their tutors, or do you want to have a conversation like a type of interview with them to reflect?
Yeah, probably
or,
an interview.
Okay, so let's say you do an interview, you might base your interview reflection on maybe what they wrote, for example. Right. So these are some things that you can examine. Now, in the class itself, because the purpose here is you're going to have the lesson plan. So let's imagine you have your lesson plan. What do you want to observe in the class that might link somehow to the lesson plan? Because you're looking to see if they are adhering to it or not.
Like if they change the activities, why they change the activities, or if they just have like a guideline, but they do something else depending on the situation.
All right, so let's think in terms of your participants. Are you thinking about the 8th semester students? All right. So I'm assuming their lesson plans will be more or less the same, or will they be different as far as the format?
They're probably like more or less the same. Yeah.
Or if you can think of something that would be pretty much the same.
Or if I observe someone in the START program, they have to be the same. It's the same form.
All right, so this will be, you try to think about who you will observe, and then what aspect of the lesson plan versus what you will observe will you examine. Okay. That's kind of where we're going with this, and it could be activities, but maybe it's a certain aspect of the activity, or because you have to think about what they actually write down. And then what they would do differently in their behavior. So, I mean, I'm not sure what detail they include in their lesson plans. If it's materials, that's a little bit easier to see. Like if they use one type of, if they say that they use it one way and they use it differently, that would be kind of easy to measure. But I'm not sure about the activities unless they just outright do it or they don't do it. Okay, that's an obvious one. But if they do the activity, do they vary?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Or maybe like the sequence of the activity.
Okay, it could be. Those are obvious ones, right? The sequence. Okay. But we have to try to think of something that is possible, right? Because you don't want, maybe they really they all stick to the lesson plan. Okay. These are just things that to think about. So, maybe the sequence of the activity. Maybe the length of the activity. I mean, that would be, I think, more,
and
possible.
Why
they stop. If they in the lesson plan indicate the time.
Yeah.
If they don't indicate the time.
Yeah, but they do.
Right, but so if they do that, or if they don't, maybe you talk to the teacher before. How long do you plan on? All right, and then you can measure time, and that would be a good. So activities but time, because you're not going to be looking at every aspect of the activity. So maybe just the time frame and see, more or less how, if they went longer on an activity, then you can say, okay, why did you go longer? And then they could give you information.
And if it's like, I'm talking about if it's useful, then we'll see if having them like write the time if that is like useful for them like at the end.
Could be, right. Is it helpful for them to plan that way? And then also at the other side, you could say, why did you extend or shorten this activity? Because you planned 20 minutes and you applied it for 10 minutes. Why? Then that's helpful information. Yeah. They could say, that I think that would be, helpful. These are things that I'd like for you to think about and then add, to this. As far as what you want to examine. So you might say, I'm going to examine written reflections, and I'm going to do written reflections and maybe then spoken reflections through interviews.
Okay.
And I'm going to measure the time allocated for per activity, something like that. Okay, now the unit of analysis, you need to be thinking about if you want to plan, if you want to look at teachers from the same school, or if you want different teachers from different schools. Now, this can change, but it's good to be thinking about this now to have kind of an idea. Are you focusing on only teachers for elementary school, maybe in the START program? And then indicate that here. Again, if this changes, that's fine, but then you're thinking about it now kind of in terms of what you're going to examine and what, the unit of analysis and what you're going to examine. Because everything here, all of this needs to fall into place, right? So what I'd like is that you kind of think about what it looks like now, and you move towards that direction. And then if one of these change, this could influence something else that might change. So we need to be thinking about that, the unit of analysis, and the qualitative. I think, if you take this approach, I think a qualitative, study might work. Probably a case study is that's what it sounds like so far. Okay, so good. All right, so if you can, I'll give you this handout. If you can fill this information and add it to your to this page underneath your name.
Underneath? Oh.
Yeah, just as I've done it here, like step 1, step 2.
Oh, okay.
And just briefly those prompts. It doesn't have to be a lot of information, but just basically the information that you provide in this handout, and then that'll be kind of the basis for your research.
Okay.
Now, I've included here in modules for week 2 this link called Developing an Argument. So I know you're just starting your thesis, your literature review rather, but it's try to think about how you want to organize also the key ideas and key concepts to your lit review. And I would encourage you to go ahead and start writing up your literature review, and we can look at it each week as whatever you have. We can talk about it and see how you're organizing it, and I can provide feedback as you progress throughout. Right, instead of waiting after 4 weeks or whatever to look at the whole thing.
I can do an outline and send it to you.
Sure, and you don't have to. If you want to, I'm trying to think of like the easiest way to do this. If you want to work in the same document and include kind of an outline at the very top,
and then start writing,
and then you can always delete it when you're finished. But I do have a template that you might find useful if you want to copy and paste this. It says Thesis Seminar template. And it has the page numbers as the headings. It has basically everything. So you can copy and paste it by opening up the document here and Control copy and paste it over. But it already has a lot of information here, like in the heading, the footer, that you don't have to mess with.
We created, right? On the link.
Right, okay. Right. So you copy and paste this over to your linked document in Google Drive. And for example, here are the headings. You can just change this and add your topics.
Oh, okay, that's perfect.
All right, so hopefully this will, I think, make it a little bit easier. And what I'd like that all of you is to keep these same headings. So like method, I see like that, and participants, instruments, the same. And you would just add your information where it says add text here. And so in your case, if you want, even on the title page, put an outline. I mean, the idea is just as a temporary thing. Or if it's easier just to create the headings, kind of a type of outline, where you just indicate the topics, and you don't have to add all the text. You can say, okay, first I'm going to talk about this, then I'm going to talk about this. You're probably not going to need more than 2 level headings. If you think you need a third heading, add the headings. But maybe it would be just as easy to use the headings as a type of outline, and then I can kind of see where you're going, because that's really what all I'm looking at the beginning anyways, just the topic sentences or the main headings to see how the logic that you're following. But I would encourage you to look at again, let me go back here to modules for week 2. developing an argument, I have information about how to organize your literature review. And I give some examples about different logical patterns that you can follow depending on your topic. And I think that you might find it useful as far as how you want to organize your information. So there's a lot of information here. There's a long video here, but I think it's worth your time looking at how to create an academic argument, because essentially that is what you're doing with your literature review. Think of it as you have your research questions, which will be at the very end of your literature review. You have your thesis statement, which is at the top, at the introduction, the last sentence. The thesis statement answers your research questions.
Oh, okay.
So think of it like you're going to pose questions at the end, but you basically want to form an argument around a thesis statement, the answer. So you want to see what the answer is from the experts, what other people say about these research questions, and then you're later going to do your own research and get your own answers and compare those to what others have said. So try to think of the literature review as forming an argument around a thesis statement that essentially sets out to answer your research questions. Okay, and I talk a little bit about that, and I talk about how to create an argument in the different parts. And so, take a look at this. I hope this helps. And whenever you start developing your literature review, we can talk about that each week and see how you're progressing.
It's so basically like the part project we did last semester. Like we have the first paragraph at the end is the thesis statement, and then the body paragraph.
Pretty much the same.
But bigger.
Yeah, exactly. So follow the same type of order. You have your introduction, then you have body paragraphs. The last paragraph of your literature review, the same. Yeah, you can restate your thesis statement, introduce your research questions. Pretty much the same idea.
Okay. Yeah, because for academic writing, we didn't do it that way. So.
Okay. Yeah, and in academic writing, you didn't really have to think really in terms of research per se, as your own research. It was more like theory. So, this is kind of what you did in applied linguistics was kind of a mini. This is, but the structure is the same as far as the introduction and the conclusion, and so in your when you start your literature review, go ahead and add your research questions at the end. You don't have to develop a paragraph, but just kind of throw them in at the very end.
So that I can keep.
And I can see too kind of what questions you want to focus on. In the introduction, if you just want to put the thesis statement, fine, and start with the body paragraphs. Don't worry about so much the developing the introduction and conclusion. But it might help to add just the thesis statement and the research questions, and then from there build your argument or your body paragraphs. Okay. And we can go from there, and so I think that would be their best bet. But do give this another thought. Your handout, specifically thinking about what you're going to examine, and your unit of analysis, thinking kind of now in practical terms, who do you think you want the participants to be? Okay.
And how many research questions do we have to have?
I would say anywhere from 2 to no more than 4.
Okay.
3 I think would be good.
Okay.
Maybe in certain cases, maybe 1, but I would say anywhere between 2 and 4.
Okay.
Yeah. And in this section here, in this case, the conceptual question, your research questions are going to be directly taken from here. So, whatever you put here, you want to, capture in your research questions. So, any other questions, concerns, doubts?
No, if I really find a survey that has already been done related to lesson planning, I can definitely do the quantitative.
Absolutely, yeah. If you find a research study that you want to duplicate, then that's perfect. We can do that.
Okay.
That's no problem. And that changes kind of the whole thing, but that's fine. Now this week, this is when you need to be figuring it out. Do a lot of reading. find, regardless if it's qualitative or quantitative, try to find 2 or 3 articles or other studies that really relate and really show you kind of what you would like to do in your own research.
Okay, yeah.
So you can get some ideas.
Yeah, because of this one I have found some, but of this one I haven't really looked for it.
Okay, yeah, and if you do a quantitative, then we'll look at, there's more, how to explain it, maybe it's a little more straightforward in the data collection, but there's more of an analysis in the sense that we'll have to look at like inferential statistics, thinking in terms of, different statistical analysis that you'll have to do, but that's fine, that's another option. But again, try to find another study that you can try to duplicate or at least modify, and especially with the instruments, the instruments and the way that you're going to analyze the data. If you can find good examples of that, say, okay, I've got good instruments and I've got some good ideas for instruments and I have a good way of analyzing this, then we can do that. But this would mean that you would be looking at a survey that you apply to at least 120. Yeah, I mean, we've been talking about the magical number here, 120, but try to think in terms of getting an instrument out to that number of educators or language teachers, and you'd probably want to do something either online or print it out or some combination, because obviously doing an online survey would be easier, but not all teachers are going to have access or be able to do it online, so you may invariably have to print it out and do it manually, which requires more time. But definitely that's another option. But you need to be making that decision. In fact, that decision you need to be making within a couple of days, because you need to start writing up your literature review. So if you have some doubts or questions, or you want to talk about certain examples of other studies, see me before next week. I don't want to wait I don't want you to make this decision next week. You need to make it now.
Yeah.
And if you're not clear about something, let me know and we can look at it and discuss it, so that you can then move forward and start developing your literature review. Okay. So there's enough time to do this, but this decision needs to be made here fairly shortly, right? So we can move forward.
Okay.
All right.
I can take this?
This is yours.
Okay.
Please upload that once you've figured out and narrowed down what type of research you want to do.
Okay.
And we'll go from there.
Okay.